Hey, hi, this is Keir Carter,
And I'm Dennis Schultz.
and we're talking about wine and Thanksgiving and what to drink for the holidays.
Yeah, so Kier, I typically do the same thing every Thanksgiving. I usually grab a white and a red. Typically, it's a Pinot Noir, maybe a Riesling.
Pinot's awesome.
Uh, am I doing the right thing? Should I be considering other wines? What are your thoughts?
Okay, so the first, always consider what you like, because when you like what you're drinking, you've made the right decision. Yeah, it should be very easy. In fact, the way wines are built, that kind of, wow, that's really yummy, is a way that wine communicates its quality to you, is whether or not you're enjoying it, truthfully. Now, when doing food and wine pairings, typically you want to think about, what you're pairing. And turkey is a game bird. Turkey's also indigenous to America. Unlike other birds like pigeons that were brought here by the French for food, the turkeys were found here. It's a natural, yeah?
I was going to say, so turkey versus chicken or pheasant or any other fowl pairs different with different wines? Or
Well, here's the main difference between most game birds and chicken. And the main difference is that those birds fly. Except for turkey, but the other ones mostly fly. Now, I'll kind of tell you how they're similar. Whenever an animal uses its wings, you'll notice how chicken has white meat in the breast. Well, duck, geese, pheasant, they all have red meat.
Okay.
Because they're using those muscles and there's blood circulating through them, so they have a lot more flavor, and typically you'd want to pair red wine with that. Now, turkey, while it doesn't fly, it does have a gamier flavor, and it still qualifies as a game bird because initially that's what it was. It didn't fly. They've gotten a lot bigger, a lot top heavier because of breeding, because of how we like our birds to taste. But it's a game bird still.
Interesting.
And classically, Pinot Noir is the pairing for game. I mean, if you go to Burgundy and if you're out there hunting in the forest, out in the woods, all those notes that you get from a quality Burgundy of truffle and forest floor, that's literally where that wine comes from. So clearly, pheasant and game are delicious with it.
So I'm already learning something. It's already 2 minutes in. I'm learning stuff. So if I gave you my menu, could you suggest a type of wine? Because typically I do a traditional, turkey stuffing, cranberry sauce, deviled eggs.
Stuff. Delicious. It's all good, man.
So is there a specific wine or wine category that I should be considering?
Okay, so going back to Pinots first, like if you want to do a red wine, Pinot Noir, one of the best regions in the world for Pinot Noirs here in America, Willamette Valley, Oregon. When you're thinking about an American pairing, you're thinking about an American dinner like turkey and stuffing and all of the American accoutrement. You should consider Willamette Valley, Oregon for Pinot Noir. They are by far, that's the best region in the United States for Pinot Noir, and also among the best in the world, one of the top two, and I'm including Burgundy in that.
Okay.
Now, you can spend a good amount of money on Pinot Noirs, but you don't necessarily have to. I typically don't want to talk about too many brands because I don't want people to feel locked into that brand.
Sure.
Not being able to find it can be discouraging. So it's better to look for that region, Willamette Valley, Oregon, or just Oregon Pinot Noirs if you can't find Willamette Valley. Montanori Estate is one of my favorites. It's organic. Comes in at about $13.99, $14.99 a bottle.
Okay, now you're talking.
Super sophisticated, very complex. Everything that you want a Pinot Noir to be, and very accessibly priced. So I love that. And if you like white wine, Pinot Gris is also a great varietal from Willamette Valley, Oregon. It's a mutation of Pinot Noir. It's also the same grape as Pinot Grigio, but it's nothing like Pinot Grigio.
Oh, okay. So when you said Pinot Gris, I thought you were just making an abbreviation or a shorthand, but
No.
it's a separate.
No, the funny thing is all the Pinots are named after the color. So Pinot Noir, that would be the black Pinot, right? Pinot Gris would be, in France, that'd be the gray Pinot. In Italian, it's Pinot Grigio, that again would be gray. Then you have Pinot Blanc, which is Pinot White.
Okay.
Yeah, but what's great about Pinot Gris from Willamette Valley or from Alsace, where they do beautiful things with Pinot Gris, is it tends to be really round and floral. It's got honeyed notes, beautiful acidity, nicely balanced, and also that's a great way to go in terms of just pairing everything on a Thanksgiving plate. It's great with turkey, it's great with the macaroni and cheese, it'll pair nicely with yams. So the Pinots, Willamette Valley, you cannot go wrong for the turkey dinner.
All right.
Yeah, definitely.
So if we make it through dinner and I'm still, coherent and alive and awake. What pairs well with dessert? Maybe you could give us some suggestions on dessert wines.
I love dessert wines because I love drinking for every course. I truthfully, I love sparkling wine with breakfast. So that'll tell you a lot about me. So here's the thing with dessert and sparkling wine or any kind of wine. Your dessert cannot be sweeter than your wine. That's the first place to start. So remember that.
Okay.
If you're eating a dessert that's so sweet that it kills the sweetness of your wine is then going to kind of taste like vinegar. It'll be too austere. It won't have the body. So here are the guidelines.
Okay.
If I was going to pair something like a creme brulee, which is kind of like that universal, you go out to a restaurant or flan or any kind of custard, Moscato d'Asti is beautiful. Now I want to really drive home that I'm not talking about Moscato. Moscato has a terrible name in the wine world because of lower end Moscatos, but Moscato d'Asti is something special. Asti is a region in northern Italy. It is actually the home of Moscato. These wines have a light sparkle to them. It's called frizzante, so it's a light tickle, not too sweet, super floral. It's like a summer day in a glass. That level of sweetness pairs really beautifully with creme brulee. And also, you have that creaminess, that kind of rich butteriness all over your tongue. Those bubbles just lift it right off and cleanse your palate. And oh wow, the florality and the creaminess is beautiful together. So that's one of my favorite pairings.
How about pies? Because I love my pies during Thanksgiving.
One of the things that I really love for pies, ciders, like an apple pie and a sweeter apple cider is just beautiful. They make pear ciders that are just quite lovely also. And they don't have to, they come in varying degrees of alcohol. So you can have one that's as high as like 10, 12%, almost like a champagne quality one. But I'm thinking of the lower alcohol ones that have a lot of residual sugar, that show a lot of fruit. They're really beautiful. When you consider an apple pie with whipped cream on top, that is awesome together. And I'd also do that with pecan pie. Like a cider with pecan pie would be great. But for some people that want to try something different, there's a place called also in Asti. There's a wine called Brachetto d'Acqui, and Brachetto, that's just crazy. It's got like raspberry, red fruit flavors.
I don't think I've heard of that one.
Roses, all abundant rose flavors. It's got some sweetness to it too, and again, sparkling wine. So that's a great wine to have for dessert.
Now you mentioned that the lower the alcohol content, the sweeter the wine. Is that a good rule of thumb? Is that in all cases?
Not in all cases, but in most cases. So here's the deal with wine, alcohol, and sugar. Sugar exists in the grape initially as sugar. When you introduce yeast as part of the fermentation process, not to get too technical, the sugar then becomes alcohol. So typically, sugar can only exist as one thing or the other, either as sweetness or as alcohol. Now, ice wine is the exception, one of the exceptions to that rule. I love ice wine, by the way. Ice wine, perfected in Germany. They make beautiful ones here in America, in the Finger Lake region. They are just lovely. So here's the deal with ice wine. It stays on the vine until after the first frost, and the grape freezes. Sugar does not freeze. So they squeeze these frozen grapes for the juice, and precious small amount of juice comes out of these grapes. That's why when you buy ice wine, you see like a half bottle because they really don't produce that much juice. So they'll introduce the yeast to that, and the yeast will go to work converting that sugar into alcohol, and then the yeast will die because it normally dies at about 13.5%. The sugar that's left behind, because there's so much more sugar than normal wine, is there. So that's one case where you'll have like a full wine, like a natural wine, 13.5%, but still residual sugar. And ice wines are awesome because they're not just sweet. They're kind of not like a raisinated grape, not dark, chewy fruit at all. It's more like bright apricots, peaches, beautiful acidity.
Interesting.
Oh my God, they're so beautiful. And with that, believe it or not, I would pair that with just a butter cookie. Like classically, that wine by itself is so interesting and so complex and sweet and gorgeous that it'll stand on its own. I don't know if sweet and gorgeous really, are technical descriptors, but will stand on its own. And then, just a butter cookie, just to add that subtle richness and that buttery kind of texture, the crunch. Man, That's living. You know, it's like really
That sounds,
simple.
that sounds
It's
really good.
simple.
I'm getting hungry already. Okay. Any last suggestions?
Vegetarians. I'd like to talk about vegetarians for Thanksgiving
Absolutely.
because I've been encountering a lot of vegetarians in my travels, and but I do salute people that are trying to live healthy. And here's what you need to remember: is it really comes down to how wines are built. A lot of red wines are very tannic, and tannins are that drying kind of a feeling that you get. For instance, when you go to a store and you buy grapes and you think that they're seedless and they're not, and you bite into it, and that bitterness just floods your palate,
Yep.
just sucking all the moisture out, those are tannins. So when you make red wine, they soak the skins and the seeds in clear juice to give it color and structure. Those tannins can be a lot for a vegetarian plate. So I would tell you, typically Cabernets from California, too big, too tannic. Super Tuscans, too big, too tannic. In fact, any wine that you would pair with a steak or with a short rib of beef or with a braised lamb shank is not going to work for vegetarians. So think Beaujolais. Think lighter, cleaner wines, sparkling wines. Definitely the way to go. And then, for a lot of people, portobello mushroom is the meat of the vegetarian world. Feel free to pair that with a softer, like a Zweigelt or there are Valpolicella. There are tons of wines you can pick out that are red, not too tannic, but great for food.
One thing that I failed to mention is that sometimes I like a little spicy.
Good.
So if I'm going a little bit spicy, especially in a vegetarian dish, any suggestions there, or
Well,
will
just-
the wines that you mentioned be sufficient as far as a vegetarian palate?
So here's the most important thing about remember spice. Like, what do you like? Like, if you like spicy food, if you want to make it spicier, add tannins. Like, typically tannins, those drying kind of structuring compounds that we call tannins, are going to exasperate spice. It's going to make your spice even spicier. There are certain varietals that you can get. Spanish wines like Garnacha typically have a lot of spice. Petit Verdot is a varietal that you can find. It's a French varietal, but you can find those made in Spain, and those are super spicy typically. And those wines are going to make it even more spicy. If you want to balance out the spice, typically I would say go with either a little sweeter wine or maybe a fruitier wine if you want it to be dry. Balancing your palate is a lot like childproofing.
Okay.
You want to find those sharp edges, and typically the sharp edges can be spice. I mean, you want to put like either sweetness or fat around that, or just lots of fruit, which I equate with fat. Another sharp edge could be just tannins or acidity in the wine, and then you want to pair that with something soft, like creamy richness, So think about what you want to bring out the most. If you want more spice, put some tannins. If you want less spice, put something soft to cushion the blow.